fuck are you?
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Backlog Banter. My name is Tucker Hazel, and this is my man. Nope, he's that guy. Tanner Dykstra, and today we are here to talk about the movie Men, directed by Alex Garland, starring Jessie Buckley, A24's newest, weirder, maybe modern masterpiece of horror. But if you would like to talk to us about Men or anything else at all, you can join our Discord, link top in the description. Of course, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell, leave a comment, and of course, talk to us about Men, because that's all we're going to be talking about until the next movie we see. But Tanner,
Yes.
we just came out of Men. It was kind of perplexing, but I'm very excited to talk to you about it.
I am also very excited to talk through Men, having just walked out of it about half an hour ago. It is a bizarre film, so
Good Lord, yeah.
If we're making this, if we're making this quick little review as like a should you go see Men, should you not go see Men, we'll do spoiler free up top for a little bit.
Yeah.
It is bizarre, especially towards the end. Once you enter that third act, once you enter that climax, it gets weird, okay?
Yeah.
There was rumblings in our theater as the events of the climax unfolded that were much well deserved. We were me and Tucker and our friend Sam, we were giggling by how bizarre the events on screen were. It was not giggle worthy, I would say.
No.
The events, there was a lot of body horror, just so you know about that going in. I didn't expect there to be that much in the film, but there's certainly a lot. But overall, I really enjoyed Men, not only for that bizarre third act climax, but also throughout. It's just a very solid, like, surreal, sort of ramping up horror experience. But what did you think, Tucker?
Yeah, it's a very well-made movie, but I would say it's a very hard movie for me to recommend to most people.
Right.
I think you have to be into film, into horror film, into niche ideas, and wanting something really creative out of a creative director. And that's what Alex Garland delivers. He delivers something that is not going to be a hit with audiences. It might be a hit with critics, but I feel like this is just an incredibly well-made, very solid horror movie for the niche audience, which, guess what? That's you and me. And as we were driving home, I'm thinking to myself, and I'm thinking of this while I'm watching the movie, I think we can add Alex Garland to this upper echelon of modern horror directors alongside Robert Eggers, Ari Aster, Jordan Peele, and now with his first real horror movie, Alex Garland, because Men has such a bar of quality in the cinematography and the set design and all these visual choices that make this movie absolutely gorgeous to look at. And I think probably pretty interesting to rewatch and dig into, because I didn't really pick up on, or I wasn't really able to clarify in my own mind what are the themes of Men. What is it trying to really say about gender roles or something? Hard to tell.
Yeah, there will be video essays aplenty explaining not only the themes of Men, but also, like, the lore. I'm sure people will dig into for some sort of in-world explanation for what is going on in the film. Especially the lore thing is really hard to parse out while you're watching the film.
Absolutely. This movie is very subtle in what it tells you, which is basically nothing.
Yeah. As for thematic things, I don't want to get too in the weeds there if we're doing a shorter form review here. But I think that Alex Garland, I think what he's really getting at is just sort of various attitudes that largely societally men have towards women, towards requiring them to be bearers of emotional weight and sexual desire. Male dominated society puts all these things on women, and that is sort of put on display and put on trial with a specific body horror and psychological horror twist in Men. Jessie Buckley does a great job in the lead role here, and I feel like she's going to be getting a lot of the critical acclaim in reviews and things like that.
Yeah.
But I want to give a special shout out to Rory Kinnear, because he does play all of the male roles except for one obviously, and he does a great job in just being odd and also scary. He is odd in that lead role of Jeffrey, sort of the house owner. And he is very ominous in all these other roles.
Yeah, Jessie Buckley, I think what really surprised me here or blew me away here was the range that she has.
Yes.
Because this character goes through so much and has so many emotions just right under the surface that come to a head sometimes. And she's running out of fear. She's being badass sometimes. She's
Yeah.
having a joyful walk through the woods as the rain comes down. And Jessie Buckley absolutely nails the range that this character has to go through and put into this situation where her skills as an actor, Jessie Buckley, are absolutely tested to their limits. And that's also true of Roy Kinnear, and I think you nailed everything with that. But
I also think it's important to point out about Jessie Buckley's performance. She keeps you grounded in that third act, that climax of bizarre wackiness, body horror stuff that's going on.
Yeah, she reacts very realistically. This isn't a horror movie where you're like, why are you doing this? Like, no, that's what I would do too.
Yeah,
and she reacts accordingly.
Yeah, but she walks that line of maintaining the sort of surrealist mood of men and also keeping the audience grounded in that stuff. But so I think she does a great job all around.
I think this movie does a great job, great use of slow-mo. I'm not often a very big fan of slow-mo, but the times they use it here are very tasteful, very high frame rate, so it's nice and smooth, and you get to really drink in these setups that they're doing. And I also think this movie is gorgeous in a color palette. It's the first horror movie that I can think of off the top of my head that focuses on green as its main color.
Yeah.
Everything is green. The forests are this lush green. There's blue flowers. The house is a nice rich red. There's such a beautiful color palette here, but it's dominated by green, and that makes it sort of an unsettling subversion of what you expect. Dark colors, brown, red for blood, whatever you think of horror movies doing for their color palette. This goes, nah, it's going to be light out most of the time. Yep. And she's going to be in a lush green forest, and everything will be super colorful and vibrant. And I really think that gives it a very unique tone.
I also want to shout out the sound design of the film is very, very good. It makes use of vocals in its score a lot, and a lot of times overlays those with the diegetic sound of the film.
Yeah.
Fantastic job. I mean, the trailer thing of her singing little notes in that long tunnel.
Yeah. To get the echo.
Yeah, to get the echo, and that is an extended sequence in the film, and
very extended.
Those sounds come back and are implemented into the score of the film, which is really, really interesting. So, great.
The last thing I want to say, before we transition to talking about the thing that we need to talk about, spoiler-wise, is that I do think this movie isn't perfect. There are two things that I criticize about it. It's not very long. It's 100 minutes. It's under 2 hours, but it can feel long because it's just really slow. And obviously that's intentional, but I found myself thinking like, man, it feels like I've been here for a while. And I was enjoying it, but I was like, well, okay, maybe this could have been picked up a little bit. There's a lot of shots that hang for a long time that I think maybe could have been cut down a little bit.
Yeah, I think it is a little lacking in urgency, but obviously that sort of meandering feeling is meant for the first bit of the film. So and like you said, not long actually by any means.
And I also think that, at least for my taste, the ending is a little too ambiguous. This is something that also happened with Annihilation, Alex Garland's last movie. It bugged me there. It bugs me here. It's left open-ended. There is no real lore depth explained. There's no insane character moment at the end. It doesn't end on any kind of punch. It's just like, okay, and we're out of here. And men on the screen. I'm like, I could have gone for something a little more satisfying story-wise instead of, you figure it out as the audience. But
sure. I mean,
that's my taste.
I personally don't mind the ambiguous ending, but that concludes our non-spoiler talk. I guess should we just give this a score right here for people that want to know? I'm gonna give this an 8 out of 10 right now.
Yeah, I think I'm on a high 8, low 9. So I'm gonna say 9. Okay. Might drop over time, but coming out of it, I'm like, man, this feels like modern horror done incredibly well, and I'm excited to see if Alex Garland continues on this horror train. I absolutely think he could be one of the great horror directors of our generation.
This is your spoiler warning right now. Get out if you don't want spoilers from men. If you dare, there's your recommendation to go see it if you're interested. So, spoiler talk right now. Tucker, how about that ending, huh? How about that climax?
Well, I would say not just the climax, or well, it is the climax, but it's like the last third of the movie or fourth of the movie or something like that. Everything from when she sees the cop standing in her front yard, and then one of the most insane visual effects violent moments I've ever viewed on film,
Mhm.
where the knife goes to the head and pulls through the mail slot, and
Yes.
holy shit.
He slices the entire forearm in two, bisects the entire
Yeah,
forearm, and then continue. That is, consistent across all the
absolutely.
versions of Rory Kinnear's various characters.
Hmm.
This
The
split,
men.
yeah, the men, of course. Let's just refer to them as the men. Good point.
Hmm.
The split hand that can operate with both fingers, and it's sort of
Yep.
like split, and it's a crazy effect
It
also, and
absolutely is. Looks
yeah.
great.
Yeah, and then I think my favorite. I mean, and then you have the damage across all of the men is very interesting in how it stays consistent, and then he gets the broken ankle, which we ultimately come to find out in something in a sequence that is a little too explainy for my liking
Mm,
when James, her husband, after he has been birthed, which we
yeah.
still need to talk about, says it is the injuries I had. My hand was split down the middle and my ankle was broken. It is the
Oh,
injuries
yeah.
that I had when I killed myself. Yeah, that's a little too explainy for my liking, but it is a cool way of implementing those injuries into the film with these monsters, I guess.
What we're really talking about here, and what's really probably this movie's gonna be talked about for the rest of time
Yes,
for,
yes,
is what is now colloquially going to be known as the birthing sequence.
yes,
The birthing sequence in which the men monster gives birth to itself like 5 times in a row,
yes,
and it just goes
yes.
on, and it does not cut, and you see every
Especially
hymen breaking open and
especially
fucking hell.
those first two times when it's the weird like forest gremlin version of Rory Kinnear,
Yeah,
who has come out and he's put leaves like in his face and his face has turned green and he is
he's turning
bloated.
into that fountain thing.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
And he's bloated with pregnancy. You're like, what the fuck? And then he gets down on all fours and he births out of him another fully formed Rory Kinnear with all the injuries and everything. And then
mm-hmm.
you're like, okay, that was fucking wild. And then that one is also like pregnant, and that happens, like you said, Tucker, a few times. I mean, one of them is born out of a one of them's back,
Yeah,
and then finally her husband James comes out of the mouth of one of them. It is
incredibly odd,
yes,
incredibly
yes,
off-putting, but in the best possible way.
yeah. As I said at the top, our theater was like, what? You could hear the murmurs going around. I was like, holy shit, what the fuck are we
I
looking
can't even
at?
believe they accomplished
Yeah,
this
exactly.
visual.
Yes, it is great visually. By the way, all the I assume it's a mix of practical and VFX, special
Mm-hmm.
effects. Looks great,
Absolutely
and
does.
yeah, it is totally shocking, which is definitely what Garland is looking for in this sequence.
Yeah.
Yeah, completely unexpected, completely unique, at least from what I can tell.
Mm-hmm.
Especially in a mainstream A24 horror movie, they're
Yeah.
known for pushing the boundary of mainstream horror films a little bit, but this is something else.
Yeah. I mean, you let's add it to the list of modern horror, like bloody things. You got, of course, the head coming off in Hereditary. You got
Yes,
the head
yes.
being smashed in
In
Midsummer.
Midsummer, yeah.
You got the nose being cut off and it's smashed in Northman, and
Yes.
now you got this, the
Yes.
hand and the birthing sequence,
Yes.
which is what absolutely puts it up there for me.
Yeah. But otherwise, I mean, outside of that was the big like spoilery thing that we were sort of dancing around for that first part of the video.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything else in the spoiler section that you would like to talk about?
That's the thing. I really don't think there is. I think that this movie doesn't really hide too much. When you watch the trailer and you're thinking, you see, okay, Rory Kinnear's playing all these roles. Jessie Buckley's out in the woods, and she's being chased around. That's what 3/4 of the movie is.
Yeah.
And there aren't that many story shifts, but it does all of that very well. And then you get the violent, wacky
Yeah.
shit.
I will say that I like, the sort of suspense building. It's a classic horror movie thing of like seeing the mysterious figure outside the window.
Yeah.
But
Oh,
it's a
great
bit
sequence.
it's a little bit
Incredible
more
editing.
yeah, it's a little bit more blatant here with the Forest Goblin, as I'm going to call him, being full stark nude, sort of like
Mm-hmm.
skulking around the rental home that Jesse Buckley's character has. And you can see him in the window, and she turns around just as you can see him. It's a fun sequence, and
Yeah,
and it is. I did find myself, my heart was tightened up a little bit in some of those,
absolutely.
especially towards the end when you're like, the motion lights are going off, and then people are disappearing. What's
Yeah.
going on? Yeah, I think it builds tension in those sequences as
Yeah,
well.
and especially because we don't know what the men monster is. We don't
Yeah,
know
yeah,
if it obviously can have multiple versions of itself out at once, but in the final sequence, it doesn't really utilize that. So often you're wondering, she closes the door and like it could still be behind her.
yeah,
One of the other versions of it could come through the window, come out of the ceiling, and boom, we have to start all over again.
yeah,
So this movie does create a sense of unease that never lets up
yeah.
from the beginning because you never are not quite sure what could happen.
Yes, I agree. But is that all? Is that all your men thoughts, Tucker?
That is absolutely all I have to say.
Okay.
I
In
think this
this,
is
yeah,
fantastic. I really had a great time with it. I'm very interested to see how other people react and just see how it does at the box office. But this is one of those examples of I'm so glad that A24 is mainstream enough to where they're able to give relatively big name directors just free reign of whatever the fuck they want with a
yeah,
great budget and super high production value.
yes.
Put it out there, weirdest shit you ever saw. Bam.
People bemoan A24 a little bit for being mainstream, but I do think that they are important in pushing the boundaries of in mainstream film a little bit.
Absolutely.
Because if nothing else, it is enjoyable to see other people in the theater reacting to the same crazy shit you're seeing.
Yep.
That is a bit of fun, and that's what you get with Men. So if you made it all the way through, if you haven't seen it and you decided to watch the spoiler section, go see it. Why not? If you're
Yeah.
interested thus far and you watch an entire review here, go see it.
Mm-hmm. And with that, we'll see you guys for the next movie review. Thank you very much for watching.
Well, okay then. Yeah. I mean, that was basically my reaction walking out of Men.